Poverty. 9.2% or 689 million people live in extreme poverty. According to the World Bank, this is considered living on less than $1.90 a day. And by COVID-19, 97 million more people met poverty. This is only globally. What do you think the United States poverty lines are? Well, for this past year, 2020, individually is $13,171.
Citizens do not now have a full measure of opportunity to achieve and to enjoy good health. Millions do not now have protection or security against the economic effects of sickness. And the time has now arrived for action to help them attain that opportunity and to help them get that protection.
Before now, poverty has been an issue and still is a social problem. Before now, poverty has always been a social problem. President Lyndon Johnson in 1964 coined the term war on poverty. This term meant that he created Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security benefits, food stamps, and, quote, subsidized school districts with a large share of impoverished students, meaning he allowed education to be affordable and accessible to students who lived in poverty. I headed out to my campus to see what the Wingate students thought about poverty and what do they actually know about it.
I would say poverty is a social problem, but I think it's mainly a financial and institutional problem that can be solved at those respective levels. But since it's not being resolved at those respective levels, then it becomes a social problem where people in society can step in to help combat and fight poverty.
A lot of all the problems caused by poverty are social issues to begin with, like things that affect financial stability, like gender discrimination that has to do with race, and even financial discrimination to begin with, and education also.
I think poverty is probably a social problem because there's a lot of political laws that are pushed like yearly that push people further into poverty, causing further poverty, and it just gets worse and worse.
I mean, like, social problems has to do with a whole society, and so I think that with minorities, like Black individuals or like Hispanics, things like that, I think that when they do go and try to get food stamps or things like that, they're not approved for those things, but other people are.
I mean, big cities where there are people in literal huts outside in like areas like Central Park, I think there's a lot of wealth in those big cities that could be distributed more evenly.
If you're already poor, that means that basically you have to, how are you going to pay for college or the education you need to get a higher paying job, which leads to more poverty, which leads to generational curses, to be honest. Because when there's generational wealth, there's generational poverty also.
Especially with the way that laws are created, so I think it ends up being more of a social problem than anything else.
Charlotte has a big homelessness community. Like, you can drive down the highways and see like all the tents like just set up, and there's like little to no help for those people, even in like the harsh winters and harsh weathers. Like, that's an institutional problem where that needs fixed and resolved, but like it hasn't been resolved, so like people in the community are helping them instead. So it turns from an institutional problem to a social problem because it's not being fixed.
Now let's check and see if they were right. Let's review the facts, shall we? So what exactly causes poverty? Well, poverty is technically a trap or a reoccurring cycle. Opportunities are needed. If we look at states in the U.S. and compare their poverty levels, the poorer states are the lower East Coast. I'm talking Alabama, South Carolina, Florida, Mississippi, and Texas, and even more. While we made progress on poverty, race also creates a problem for other individuals. And let's look at the facts on this one. 18.8% of blacks have the highest poverty rate than whites, Asians, and Hispanics. But females around our age, which is about 18 to 20 years old, experience poverty. This is about 21.35%. Marx believed that capitalism drove workers into misery and owners into wealth, meaning we didn't tax the rich or help the poor at all. We pretty much taxed the poor and it helped the rich. Davis Moore's strategy says that encouraging people with the skills and knowledge to do the important, highly skilled jobs, society must promise them higher income or other rewards. Remember when I mentioned generational wealth? Well, children growing up in poverty are less likely to graduate high school, and they're also more likely to commit street crime. Let's look at the pen example as an example. Well, you've heard of the saying where if you don't have a pen in school, you can't take notes. If you can't take notes, then you won't be able to study. If you won't be able to study, you won't be able to pass your class. If you can't pass your class, you won't get into college. If you don't get into college, you don't get an education. If you don't get an education, you can't get a job. Hence, you'll probably be poor. That's technically what generational wealth is on the negative side effects. So why not just give everybody a pen and start them off strong?